Welcome back, everybody. I have been looking for a video more on the history of the RBS-15 anti-ship missile, and I had somebody that recommended this video. It's by Dark Tech. I've done, I think, 2 of their videos previously, and I liked both of them. I'm hoping that's what this one gets into. If it doesn't get into it, and it's basically just like the last one I did, nobody will probably ever see this. But if it goes in the direction I'm hoping it will, then I'll have this out. I'm also working on the next couple of episodes of the fighter pilot series. It got, a little bit, I got a little bit away from it for a little bit, but I'm hoping to finish it up in the next week and a half or so. So be on the lookout for that, and let's jump into it.
As the US and the Soviet Union were engulfed in an unprecedented arms race after World War II ended, there was another country that wanted to outdo the Soviets during the Cold War: Sweden. The Swedish Navy had developed the RB-08 anti-ship missile for its Halland-class destroyers in the early 1960s. However, it lacked the range and versatility of its Soviet counterpart, the older P-15 Termit. As such, the European nation was forced to buy American-made Harpoon missiles to face a possible Soviet threat. The solution, however, was temporary. As early as 1978, Sweden started developing a new generation of state-of-the-art fire-and-forget surface-to-surface and air-to-surface anti-ship missiles. The ambitious design promised a unique and formidable anti-ship missile that would not only surpass the P-15 Termit, but would even outdo the American Harpoon, drawing Sweden closer to military weaponry independence. In a bold move, Sweden cancelled a large order of U.S. Harpoon missiles in the early 1980s. Instead, it ordered its own domestic mighty RBS-15. Only time would tell if the ambitious Swedish technology was ready to perform in the big leagues.
So far, this is definitely the direction I was hoping it would go. So, chances are I'll put this one out. I have a question specifically about the RBS-15 and kind of the previous versions of it before it was put out. I have seen recently that it's used as coastal artillery, or can be used as coastal artillery, from, I believe it's the back of trucks. It's like truck mounted. When did that start? When did the idea of using anti-ship missiles as coastal artillery versus just regular artillery pieces, for Sweden specifically, when did that start, and with what weapon system did that start with?
Not on par. In the early 1960s, Sweden had a problem. It had recently signed Sweden's Defense Resolution of 1958, which entailed a significant reconfiguration of its military branches. The Navy was to undergo a massive restructuring, abandoning its larger ships in exchange for a lighter force consisting of fast attack craft vessels. The endeavor was a challenge in and of itself, but it also posed a much more significant issue. The Saab RB-08 anti-ship missiles used by the Swedish Navy were too large and required a cumbersome rail system to be mounted on the warships. These systems would just not fit in many of the smaller vessels that the Navy was procuring. To make matters worse, each RB-08 missile had to be individually arranged for launch, and only 2 missiles could simultaneously be on the launch rails. This situation put the Swedish Navy at a considerable disadvantage compared to the Soviets, whose P-15 Termit missile, codenamed Styx by NATO, stored the projectiles in individual containers on deck, making them immediately available for launch. If something drastic was not done, the new smaller ships would only be able to carry a few anti-ship missiles, and...
Okay, so the Soviet side, it looks like theirs can be used in like rapid fire, whereas on the Swedish side, it's more like, what, a double-barreled shotgun? Like, you better get it in those 2 shots or it's going to take a while to reload and get them back out?
They would be more challenging to store and launch. As if that weren't enough, the RB-08, which had been developed some years after the Termit, was slower and had an inferior range compared to the Soviet solution. There was no way around it. a new missile had to be developed. Soon, Saab attempted to find a swift and effective solution to the problem by taking the RB-04E missile used by the Air Force and modifying it to function as a new anti-ship missile. But after an early development stage, the initial prototypes turned out to be inferior to the Harpoon missile that the Swedish Navy was already using as a temporary solution. Consequently, the idea was scrapped. The RBS-15.
Here we go.
Unwilling to leave the future of Swedish defense in the hands of American technology, Saab Bofors Dynamics began the development of a new missile with the sole objective of surpassing what the Harpoon missile could do. The project was led by Hans Allender, and the design was renamed from RB-04 Turbo to RBS-15 to showcase the extensive modifications and new design measures that were taking place. Things moved quickly from then on, with a contract for development signed in 1979 and the Swedish government canceling a large Harpoon missile order the very same year, opting for their own indigenous design over that of the US. The move was risky, as the RBS-15 was still in early development, but Sweden was confident in its weapon development prowess. The RBS-15 was crafted from the Air Force's RB-04 missile, but underwent several adjustments and modifications. Its frontal section was preserved, including the warhead, but the rear received new wings and a turbofan engine instead of the rocket engine used before. The missile undertook trials in 1983 and became operational within the Swedish Navy 2 years later. The technology proved to be highly effective, surpassing all expectations. Immediate plans were made to develop a wide array of RBS-15s, including a version for the Västergötland-class submarines, which were to have 4 vertical missile launch tubes for RBS-15 missiles in an extended hull. Unfortunately, this solution would never materialize due to budget constraints and the specific operational doctrine of Swedish submarines. Evolution.
What specifically about Swedish doctrine made that unnecessary?
The initial RBS-15 was deemed Mark I and was manufactured from 1985 to 1990. It was widely used by the Swedish Navy and the Swedish Air Force, as well as a specialized solution for coastal defense systems. Saab immediately began working on a honed version of the RBS-15, which would come to be known as Mark II. However, the corporation could not secure a manufacturing contract until 1994, when they could finally produce the newer version of the anti-ship missile. The RBS-15 Mark II had the same 70-kilometer range as its predecessor. Still, it was upgraded with advanced mid-course and terminal guidance systems, as well as radar and IR signature capabilities. Just as Saab attained a contract for the RBS-15 Mark II, it was already working on the design for what would become the RBS Mark III. This time, Saab cooperated with the German company Diehl Defense to modify the missile design so it could achieve a much longer operational range. Mark III. Mark III became a powerhouse. Its range increased from 70 kilometers to over 200, thanks to larger fuel capacity and a new fuel formula. Additionally, the Mark III was outfitted with an integrated GPS and selectable priority targeting, which improved the weapon system's flexibility and accuracy. The Mark III became the ultimate RBS-15 system, and it is now being used by Sweden and several countries around the globe, including the German Navy, which equipped its Braunschweig-class corvettes with formidable Swedish technology. The newest version of the RBS-15 has also been adapted into trucks by the Finnish truck maker Sisu, which allows the projectile to be launched from land and sea. The Mark III is still the Swedish anti-ship missile that is used today, and it has been in production since 2004. The RBS-15 Mark III is a fire-and-forget anti-ship missile that can be launched and entirely disregarded by the deploying ship, which can then move to safety or deploy other weapon systems.
Yeah, So we've talked a little bit about this with, different systems that we've seen used, particularly in the Ukraine recently over the last year or so, with these different platforms of fire and forget. I feel like this is just the direction that everything is going to go in the future. It makes the whole situation more strategically advantageous, and it makes it less dangerous for the person who, or for the vessel or group or whatever that is firing these weapons. You don't have enough time to essentially dial back in their placement, which is kind of the big fear with a lot of these systems, is that you can't hang around. You have to haul ass out of there, because you can essentially get locked on, and that's just it. But with the fire and forget ones, it gives you the flexibility to be able to get the hell out of Dodge, but without the weapon being just totally useless from you doing that. And so I feel like this is the direction things are going in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if, almost everything made going forward is made this way.
The internal navigation and tracking systems then correct the projectile's trajectory in real time using a
This is a super interesting part of this to me, is this onboard like AI. This is a super interesting part of it to me.
complex array of sensors and computer algorithms. As the projectile is deployed, it provides a spectacular sight as its two side-mounted angled missile thrusters fire, sending the warhead off towards its target. The canister launching system is compact and reliable, allowing the RBS-15 Mark III missile to be launched even from smaller warships. Its advanced navigation and targeting systems deliver remarkable precision and safety for friendly units, even in the most complex combat scenarios, and the missile can reach a speed of Mach 0.9, carry a payload of 900 kilograms, and travel within a range of over 200 kilometers. The future. Because of its success, Saab and Diehl Defense are producing a new version. The RBS Mark IV Gungnir was ordered in 2017 and is projected.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like the name. I like the way it looks. In the last Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that was one of the weapons you could get, was like the spear itself. You found it in some like iceberg somewhere. But yeah, awesome name. Obviously the ties to Viking mythology.
Projected to be drastically more powerful and versatile than the current Mark III. The Swedish Navy also expects to receive them by the mid-2020s. This version will increase the weapon's range to over 300 kilometers and be completely compatible with warships, truck missile launchers, and aircraft, making it a truly versatile missile solution for any modern warfare scenario. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed this story, click on your screen and check out another of our documentaries channels, where we delve into the most fascinating military events and the incredible technology that made them possible.
Yeah, great video. I really liked this one. This was basically what I was looking for, was kind of a deep dive into the missile itself. The history of it, all of that stuff. So really great video. What I'm curious of, not even specifically with missile systems, anti-ship missiles, not them specifically, but what I wonder is, this is kind of the first major conflict that we've had in a while, right? I mean, obviously you had the wars in the Middle East, but those were very different types of wars. I don't want to say like colonial wars, because it's not exactly that, but it certainly rhymes with like that sort of old colonial war, right? Where the fighting power, weapon systems, all of that just were not comparable for the two sides. What I'm curious of is what countries learn from watching this conflict in the Ukraine and how weapon systems change going forward, specifically due to what countries and weapons manufacturers are seeing happening on the ground in this conflict. It's a super interesting kind of idea to me, and I'm curious what everybody thinks about that. Sorry that I did kind of back-to-back RBS-15 videos, but this is really the type of video I was looking for initially. So, yeah, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I'll put the link to the original video in the description box down below so y'all can go check it out and show Dark Tech some love, and I'll see you all next time.